Kryptonite is more than just Superman's famous weakness. It's a fascinating spectrum of mysterious minerals with wildly different effects on Kryptonians. From debilitating radiation to mind-bending mutations, each type adds a unique twist to the mythology. Let's start by diving into the most iconic and foundational kind, the one that truly shaped Superman's vulnerability and legacy in every story. Green Kryptonite. Green Kryptonite is the OG Kryptonite, the glowing green crystalline mineral that everyone immediately pictures when they hear the word. It's literally fragments of Superman's home planet, Krypton, irradiated and transformed into a deadly weakness that gradually saps his strength. But here's the thing, it doesn't just zap him instantly to human-level weakness. Instead, it hits him like a creeping illness, flu-like symptoms, nausea, dizziness, and the longer he's exposed, the more his powers fade until he's at serious risk of dying. Before you imagine Superman dropping like a sack of bricks the second he sniffs some green kryptonite, hear me out. The classic portrayal, dating back to its origin on the 1943 Superman radio show and cemented by the 1951 comics, has green kryptonite weakening Superman over time, not in a blink. He remains physically stronger than any human, but the pain and power drain incapacitate him, making him vulnerable rather than powerless. That slow burn effect actually makes stories better, adding real suspense while respecting his superhuman resilience. The green glow ties symbolically to Superman's lost homeworld, giving the mineral emotional weight. It's not just his weakness, it's a piece of Krypton itself, a constant reminder that he can never fully escape his past. Lex Luthor famously uses green kryptonite as his go-to weapon, plotting elaborate traps or crafting deadly rays fueled by the stuff. Even Batman keeps some on hand as a contingency if Superman ever goes rogue, and the radiation it emits can be blocked by lead, which has led to some classic plot devices involving lead-lined suits, containers, or walls locked away to contain or shield the Man of Steel. Green Kryptonite's effects are consistent and heavily canonized across comics, cartoons, and movies. Exposure causes physical pain, weakness, reduced healing, and potential long-term damage. Some stories even claim a cancer risk from prolonged radiation. But again, it doesn't instantly turn Superman human strength, it just weakens him enough to level the playing field without undoing his entire physiology. That subtlety often gets lost in casual conversations, but it's exactly what makes Green Kryptonite such a powerful narrative tool. This mineral basically set the template. It's the Achilles heel of Superman, the iconic vulnerability that lets writers maintain suspense and fairness even when the hero is nearly invincible. It humanizes him without breaking the fantasy, which is why it still dominates the Kryptonite mythos decades later. But if you think green kryptonite is the only way to mess with Superman, wait until you see what red kryptonite can do. Red kryptonite. Red kryptonite is the wild card of Superman's kryptonite collection. At first glance, it looks like green kryptonite's fiery cousin, a red crystalline mineral, often shimmering and just as jagged. But here's the thing, unlike green kryptonite's consistent power drain, red kryptonite delivers chaos. Exposure to it doesn't just weaken Kryptonians, it sends their bodies and minds into wild, unpredictable spins that can last anywhere from a few hours to a couple of days. Before you dismiss it as just that weird red rock, hear me out. Red kryptonite's effects range from mood swings and personality flips to outright mutations that bend Superman's physiology into unrecognizable shapes. The classic example? In the Silver Age comics, one red kryptonite chunk caused Superman's head to balloon to an enormous size. Because why not? It's like the writers threw scientific consistency out the window and said, let's see what happens if the Man of Steel gets cartoonishly bizarre. Red kryptonite actually appeared after green kryptonite became the staple weakness. Some post-crisis stories link its origin to the reality-warping villain Dominus, who recreated vintage Silver Age craziness by crafting these reality-altering red stones. This makes sense, because red kryptonite almost always acts as a plot wildcard, changing the rules depending on what the story demands. It's a perfect narrative tool for what-if scenarios or temporary character experiments. The range of red kryptonite's effects is enormous. Sometimes it messes with Superman's emotions, turning him impulsive, aggressive, or wildly out of character. Other times, it causes full-on physical mutations, growing extra limbs, becoming transparent, or even losing inhibitions so completely that Clark Kent's usual moral compass goes on vacation. The TV show Smallville leaned heavily into this, inventing Kal, a reckless and hedonistic version of Clark unleashed by red kryptonite exposure. The show turned red kryptonite into a kind of supercharged disinhibitor, which made for some truly chaotic episodes. The key thing is, these changes are always temporary. Red kryptonite's hold wears off without permanent damage, which is why writers love it. It shakes things up but doesn't break their precious continuity. It lets Superman explore his darker or stranger sides without any lasting consequences. Red kryptonite even pops up as visual gags. From giant heads to bizarre body contortions, it's the perfect way to get a laugh or the wince. But here's where it gets weird. Because red kryptonite can do anything, it also breaks almost every rule you expect from kryptonite, leaving fans and creators debating how much creative freedom is too much. On one hand, it enriches Superman storytelling by injecting unpredictability and fun. On the other, it can feel like a get-out-of-jail-free card that erodes narrative stakes. This tension between flexible plot device and maintaining consistent character development is exactly why red kryptonite still sparks lively fan debates decades later. Compared to green kryptonite's reliable weakness, truth, red kryptonite is pure chaos wrapped in a ruby-colored riddle. It's the ultimate narrative experimental lab, where writers toss out logic and let their imaginations run wild, showing us all the strange, emotional, and sometimes outright bizarre possibilities within Superman's mythos. But if you think unpredictable is wild, wait until you hear about blue kryptonite and how it flips the whole kryptonite dynamic on its head. Blue kryptonite. Blue kryptonite flips everything you thought you knew about kryptonite on its head. Unlike classic green kryptonite, which literally drains Superman's strength, blue kryptonite has zero effect on him. Instead, it targets one of Superman's strangest and most flawed counterparts, Bizarro. Before you shrug this off as a weird niche, hear me out. Blue kryptonite is the ultimate anti-Bizarro weapon, a perfect inverse to green kryptonite's role against Superman himself. Back in the Silver Age, when DC churned out all kinds of twisted alternate versions, the Bizarro characters arrived, distorted clones with backward speech and flawed logic. Blue kryptonite was introduced as the mineral harmful to these Bizarros, but completely safe for the real Superman, so he could wield shards of blue kryptonite as a tactical weapon against these near duplicates without any risk to himself. It's the polar opposite of green kryptonite, a killer made for the imperfect copy, not the original. Visually, blue kryptonite stands out with deep blue crystalline formations. It's not just a color swap, it symbolizes everything reversed and broken about Bizarro. While green kryptonite represents Krypton's radioactive remains, blue kryptonite reflects the imperfection of a failed copy. This neat theme keeps fans happy, even if blue kryptonite never sees as much screen or page time as the classic green stuff. Against Bizarro and similarly flawed Kryptonians, blue kryptonite is like poison. Exposure rapidly weakens them, causes pain, and can even be fatal if they're trapped with it too long. This adds an interesting tactical twist in stories where Bizarros usually overwhelm with brute force. Blue kryptonite becomes the secret weapon Superman and allies can exploit to beat an opponent with nearly identical powers. Imagine two giants going at it, but one's weakness is the other's weapon. What's especially fascinating is how blue kryptonite underscores the theme of duality and inversion throughout Bizarro tales. It's not just a plot device, but a metaphor. For every perfect Superman, there's an imperfect shadow with its own vulnerabilities. Blue kryptonite physically embodies that idea. It even gives Superman a rare edge. While green kryptonite is crippling, blue kryptonite is something he can safely wield. Still, despite this clever concept, blue kryptonite remains obscure in mainstream stories. It mostly shows up in Bizarro arcs or Silver Age throwbacks. Its appearances are sporadic, and many casual fans don't even know it exists. Which is odd since it solves the "how do you beat your evil twin" problem so neatly. It's Kryptonite's forgotten sibling who only pops up for family reunions, never a spin-off. Because it doesn't harm Superman, blue kryptonite doesn't create the vulnerable, intimate moments green kryptonite does. No sudden weakness or agonizing pain. Instead, it's more tactical and symbolic, a tool against twisted mirrors, rather than a personal curse. Fans love that it lets Superman use kryptonite as a weapon instead of just a weakness. Blue hurts Bizarro, green hurts me is a simple but satisfying symmetry. It shows kryptonite's role in the mythos isn't just about weakness, but about balance and reflection. For every original, an imperfect copy, and every weakness, a mirror weapon. To sum up, blue kryptonite is moderately common but thematically sharp. Its effects are clear but limited in scope. It's one of the few kryptonites that makes Superman stronger by proxy. While it doesn't grab the spotlight like green or red kryptonite, it's essential for fans who dive into Superman's twisted counterparts and thematic depth. But if you think inverse weakness is wild, wait until you hear about gold kryptonite, the mineral that permanently strips Superman of his powers. Gold kryptonite. Gold kryptonite is the kryptonite you do not mess around with. Unlike green kryptonite, which weakens Superman temporarily and painfully, gold kryptonite is the permanent off switch for all Kryptonian powers. Before you roll your eyes at how often a mineral that permanently depowers a Kryptonian could even exist in comics, hear me out. It's not only incredibly rare, but also heavy with symbolic and narrative weight. First appearing way back in 1962's Adventure Comics 299, gold kryptonite looks like shimmering golden crystals with a metallic sheen. This instantly signals something special, dangerous, and far beyond the usual surprises green kryptonite delivers. It is described as a crystalline mineral that disables Kryptonian cells from metabolizing yellow sun radiation, the exact energy that fuels Superman's flight, strength, speed, invulnerability, X-ray vision, heat vision, and basically everything else. So, gold kryptonite's effect is a total, sweeping shutdown of his entire power set. And here's the kicker. Most stories present this loss as permanent. When a Kryptonian stands within about 2 feet of gold kryptonite, they don't just get weak or hurt, they lose their superpowers forever. Or at least until some crazy extraordinary plot device comes along to reverse the process. Unlike green kryptonite, which causes physical pain, radiation sickness, and can even kill, gold kryptonite usually doesn't physically harm the body beyond robbing the Kryptonian of their powers. After exposure, they're basically a normal human with none of their superhuman advantages. No flying, no laser eyes, no invincibility. It's like watching Superman take off his suit and find out his secret identity was all he had. Because of that near-permanent effect, gold kryptonite is treated like a nuclear option in the story landscape. Writers use it sparingly, reserving it for the highest stakes, most existential moments of Superman's saga. It's the narrative doomsday button for Kryptonian powers. This makes total sense. If Superman lost his powers forever, the entire DC Universe landscape would be reshaped in an instant. The mighty superhero would suddenly become a fragile, powerless man. So, gold kryptonite storylines tend to explore weighty themes. What happens if Superman's entire identity as the Man of Steel is stripped away? Can he still be a hero without the powers that made him legendary? What does it even mean to be heroic at the human level? Gold kryptonite also raises deep ethical and psychological questions that most other kryptonite variants don't. Superman's strength and invulnerability have always been closely tied to his moral compass and confidence. But what if he has neither strength nor invulnerability? Does he remain the beacon of hope we know? Could he live a normal life without constant threats? Or would losing his powers feel like a form of death itself? Fans and commentators often debate if it's better for gold kryptonite's effect to be truly permanent, creating lasting and realistic consequences, or reversible, giving writers the dramatic flexibility to reset Superman's powers when the story calls for it. It's a classic clash between maintaining meaningful drama and keeping practical storytelling options open. Despite never-ending continuity shifts in the sprawling DC universe, the core traits of gold kryptonite have remained surprisingly consistent over time. Its permanent depowering effect and lethal proximity rule have stayed stable from its Silver Age origins right up to modern comic runs. Even retcons and reboots that hint the effect might be temporary or reversible pale next to canonical appearances where gold kryptonite clearly stands as the most extreme and absolute threat to Kryptonian powers. Completely different in kind from the weakening of green or the unpredictable mutations of red kryptonite. Here's the thing. Gold kryptonite is less about inflicting physical harm and more about identity loss. Pure and simple. It forces readers and characters alike to confront what happens when the very source of Superman's power is stripped away completely and irreversibly. This is exactly why it's so rare as a story element, because it functions like the endgame mineral. Once it's in play, there are effectively no second chances. And that permanency gives it an existential weight few other kryptonite variants ever carry. But if you think gold kryptonite's dramatic, permanent off switch sounds intense, wait until you hear about black kryptonite and the way it literally fractures Superman's very self. Black kryptonite. Black kryptonite is the wild card of the kryptonite family. Dark, mysterious, and with an effect way deeper than just weakening Superman physically. It usually appears as jet black shards or crystals, sometimes with eerie green or purple highlights, making it look like something you definitely don't want to touch. But here's the twist. Black kryptonite doesn't just zap Superman's powers or twist his body. Its signature move is splitting a Kryptonian into 2 separate personas, usually one good and one evil. This mineral makes your internal argument with yourself disturbingly literal and physical. Before you roll your eyes thinking, of course it just splits him. Hear me out. This isn't your average kryptonite effect. Black kryptonite gained major attention from the TV show Smallville, where it physically separated Clark Kent from Kal-El into 2 beings, each embodying different sides of his personality and heritage. You actually see the good and bad halves duke it out, turning Superman's internal moral struggles into something you can punch and grapple with. That's a storytelling boldness that turns psychological conflict into real, physical battle. In canonical comics, black kryptonite is rarer and more ambiguous, often seen as synthetic, or created by manipulating other kryptonite types rather than a natural krypton fragment. It doesn't have the mainstream presence of green or red kryptonite, but when it appears, the focus is on breaking a character down into pieces and forcing self-confrontation. Not just causing weakness, but making Superman face his darkest and brightest selves in a battle that's equal parts symbolic and physical. Here's some specifics. In Smallville, Black Kryptonite touches Clark and splits him into Clark Kent, the compassionate human-raised boy, and Kal-El, the alien, more ruthless Kryptonian tied to his father's expectations. They don't just argue, they throw down, with each side representing opposite identities and desires. This idea existed before Smallville, but was never so clearly defined. You can catch echoes in Superman 3, where synthetic kryptonite creates an evil Superman, but black kryptonite formalizes the internal battle as a neat radioactive package with a clear visual indicator. The exact effect varies by story and medium. Sometimes the split is full, a physical doubling into two bodies. Other versions show psychological fragmentation or hallucinations instead of real clones. The consistent core, divide and conquer of identity, making black kryptonite less about raw damage and more about fracturing self-unity. That gives it a unique appeal for fans who like kryptonite that messes with the mind, not just powers. Symbolically, black kryptonite is gold. Superman's identity is always a balancing act between Kryptonian origins and human experience, and this mineral externalizes that tension dramatically. It's the perfect shortcut into questions like, who am I really? And what if my darker impulses were free? Fans have obsessed over this inner wrestling match for decades, and black kryptonite stages those fights physically. Earlier kryptonite variants mutated or weakened Superman, sometimes warping his body or mind unpredictably. But black kryptonite is next level. It's not just hurting you, it's splitting you apart and forcing you to examine every piece individually. Darker, deeper, and way more complicated than green kryptonite radiation. That said, black kryptonite remains light in traditional comics. It mostly rides on Smallville's success and a few other appearances, so its effects come mainly from TV and secondary media, not major comic storylines. The mechanics are loose, sometimes reversible splits or purely psychological, but the core idea stays firm. Black kryptonite splits good from evil inside a Kryptonian and makes them fight it out. Fans love its psychological depth. It's not just Superman getting hurt or powerless. It's him torn from within, battling himself like no other kryptonite type allows. There's something terrifying and oddly satisfying about a mineral forcing this ultimate self-confrontation. Some critics feel it edges into rehashing the evil Superman trope from movies like Superman 3, missing chances to innovate. But most agree it's the clearest, most iconic use of kryptonite as a mental and moral fracture instead of mere physical poison. If a fractured self sounds wild, wait until we dive into pink kryptonite's unique social commentary. That one makes black kryptonite's split look almost simple. Pink kryptonite. Pink kryptonite is one of the strangest and most controversial types of kryptonite. Unlike others that physically weaken or mutate Kryptonians, pink kryptonite's effect isn't about harming Superman's powers. Instead, it's famously linked to changing Superman's sexuality or gender expression. Yeah, pink kryptonite supposedly makes Superman gay or more feminine, but it only appeared once in official canon, basically as a satirical joke. Before you groan, remember this came from a very different era in comics, one full of awkward attempts at queer humor, long before today's standards of representation. That single story treated Superman's altered behavior as a joke, playing heavily on stereotypes and definitely not meant to be taken seriously or respectfully. The radiation from pink kryptonite reportedly changed how Superman acted socially, not his physical powers. Think less weakness and more weird social glitch, which isn't exactly an ideal way to portray queer identities. In that lone appearance, exposure to pink kryptonite made Superman act in ways coded as more effeminate or attracted to men, effectively making him gay briefly. This was played strictly for laughs with outdated stereotypes, which drew sharp criticism even then, and even more now. There was zero nuance or real exploration of queer identity, just turning something serious into a punchline that hasn't aged well. The cultural backlash and increasing awareness of this problematic portrayal contributed to pink kryptonite's erasure from DC's canon. Recent Black Label comics, DC's mature and often continuity revising line, explicitly state pink kryptonite no longer exists in the official DC universe. This is DC's clear move to distance themselves from the insensitive concept. So while pink kryptonite was once part of kryptonite lore, it now stands as a what not to do cautionary tale about sexuality and gender in comics. Here's where it gets interesting. Pink kryptonite highlights how DC Comics' cultural sensibilities have evolved. Its rarity and swift decanonization show how publishers have recognized and corrected past missteps with queer themes. Today, such crude caricatures would be immediately rejected. Pink kryptonite is a reminder of the uneven ground comics once stood on and the mistakes they've since tried to avoid. Despite obscurity, pink kryptonite remains a notorious curiosity in fan talks, a weird kryptonite trivia nugget. But the conversation around it has grown more respectful and critical, stressing why it's better left in the past. It's a one-story footnote that still sparks debate about representation, stereotypes, and comic humor boundaries. To sum up, pink kryptonite's impact is behavioral and social, not physical. It appeared only once as satire. It's widely critiqued for queer stereotyping. And it's been officially removed from continuity as DC modernized its approach. Pink kryptonite isn't a true part of Kryptonite canon, but a marker of comics' complicated history with sexuality and representation. But if a kryptonite that changes behavior seems wild, just wait till you see the one that targets plants, and nothing else. Next up, white kryptonite. White kryptonite. White kryptonite is the oddball of the kryptonite family, completely harmless to Kryptonians, humans, and animals, but deadly to all plant life. It doesn't weaken Superman, but it will kill every plant it touches, whether earthweeds or alien flora. White kryptonite is an environmental weapon rather than a personal threat, making it one of the less iconic but conceptually interesting kryptonite types. Before you tune out because it just kills plants, hear me out. Its ability to destroy vegetation regardless of origin opens storytelling angles most kryptonite variants don't have. Writers introduced white kryptonite for plots focusing on plant-based villains, alien vines, or toxic jungles, that Superman struggles to fight otherwise. Since it leaves living creatures alone, it lets stories explore environmental damage and the collateral costs of destroying ecosystems. That raises ethical questions about using such a weapon indiscriminately. Visually, white kryptonite usually appears as bright or glowing white crystals, often compared to quartz, but with that unmistakable danger mineral glow. It shows up sporadically in kryptonite lore, rarer than green or red, but more common than ultra-obscure colors, with the same stable description: kills plants, no effect on Kryptonians. Its canonical presence is moderate. There aren't many direct comic storylines with white kryptonite, but it consistently appears in encyclopedias and community discussions as the definitive plant poison. This makes it less flashy and personal than green kryptonite, which causes Superman physical pain, or red kryptonite, which causes unpredictable mutations. Instead, white kryptonite expands kryptonite's concept from superhero weakness to environmental hazard. Here's where it gets weird. Superman himself is untouched by white kryptonite, but its use still carries implications. Imagine Superman facing a planet overrun by hostile alien plants. Using white kryptonite might zap the plant monsters, but it also wipes out the entire ecosystem, harming innocent species and unbalancing life. This ecological damage raises morality questions for a hero who protects all life. How far can nature be treated as the enemy? White kryptonite's fatal effect on plants forces writers and fans to consider these gray areas. Of course, it's not the kryptonite fans think of for intense vulnerability scenes. You won't find Clark Kent collapsing beside white kryptonite because it just doesn't do that. That limited scope puts white kryptonite below iconic colors, but above totally obscure ones. Still, it broadens kryptonite's conceptual reach beyond Kryptonian poison. Fans often joke about how deadly white kryptonite would be to characters like Poison Ivy, who command plants, turning their entire power into a liability. Some have half-jokingly suggested it as a gardening tool for supervillains tired of weeds. Great, add that to the list. The evidence for white kryptonite is moderate. Direct comic appearances are limited, but secondary lore, encyclopedias, and fan compilations agree on the core trait: kills all plants, nothing else. For this video, you can present it as the ecological outlier of kryptonite types, an environmental weapon, not a personal threat, with unique implications rarely explored in others. But if you think white kryptonite is niche and harmless, wait until you get a load of the other rare types that don't just tweak powers, but mess with identity, behavior, and reality itself. Other rare variants. Kryptonite isn't just green, red, or blue. It comes in a whole spectrum of rare types that expand kryptonite from a simple weakness into a narrative Swiss Army knife. Mostly appearing in Silver Age comics or one-off stories, these obscure variants explore everything from animal powers to psychic control, behavioral effects, and threats to humans. The sheer creative range is surprising. Take orange kryptonite. Instead of weakening, it gives powers, but only to animals. Superman's dog, Krypto, for example, gains super abilities for about 24 hours, turning into an unstoppable superdog. Imagine a dog running faster than a speeding bullet. It flips the usual kryptonite script from threat to weird bonus. Then there's Platinum Kryptonite, which does the opposite of green. It grants Kryptonian-level powers to humans permanently, turning ordinary people into kryptonite-powered superhumans. It's a massive power-up variant, though incredibly rare in the comics. You'd expect it to come up more often. It basically hands out Superman's powers like candy. Anti-kryptonite is a darker twist. Instead of hurting Kryptonians, it's deadly to humans. This flips Superman's weakness on its head and could be a terrifying weapon against people. Villains wielding anti-kryptonite as an anti-human superweapon? That's a grim expansion of the lore, even if it's rarely explored. Behavioral variants like Silver and Periwinkle Kryptonite show Kryptonite's effects don't have to be physical. Silver Kryptonite acts like a powerful intoxicant for Kryptonians, causing hallucinations, paranoia, and loss of control. It's like Superman on a bad trip. Losing power is one thing, but losing his grip on reality is way worse. Periwinkle works similarly, but more like a mellow disinhibitor, lowering inhibitions rather than triggering psychotic episodes. These highlight how Kryptonite can mess with Superman's mind and emotions, not just his strength. Then there's the downright exotic. Kryptonite, created accidentally by Supergirl trying to cure kryptonite poisoning, instead grants powers to normal life forms. Superman's cat Streaky is the prime example, becoming a superpowered pet. This is the classic Super Kitty origin, showing Kryptonite can sometimes spread powers rather than take them away. Jewel Kryptonite is another rare type. It amplifies psychic abilities, letting Clark influence others' minds. Kryptonite as a psychic amplifier? That's quite the leap from plain radiation. Kryptonite adds a practical twist. It magnetically attracts Kryptonian artifacts. Phantom Zone villains use it to locate lost technology. Basically, it turns Kryptonite into a tracker, making it a thief's dream tool. These variants show Kryptonite isn't just a hazard, but also a versatile plot device. The complexity grows with hybrid types combining effects, like Red-Gold Kryptonite, which causes both power loss and memory loss, making Superman weaker and forgetful. Even crazier mixes like Red-Green-Blue-Gold can split Superman into separate beings. These hybrids rarely appear beyond one story, but demonstrate writers juggling effects to crank up drama. Finally, Slow Kryptonite targets humans instead of Kryptonians. Acting like Kryptonite for people, it weakens humans and flips the classic Superman vulnerability. Mostly niche, it shows writers sometimes extended Kryptonite's impact beyond just Superman, raising stakes in unusual ways. Here's the thing, almost all these rare variants come from Silver Age or secondary sources, so their canonical status is shaky and mostly treated as trivia or fun extras by fans. They're weird experiments that don't always fit modern continuity, but reveal how wildly creative Kryptonite's concept has been. From granting powers to animals and humans, inducing hallucinations, to tracking lost tech, these variants turned Kryptonite into a storytelling Swiss Army knife. That said, piling on too many Kryptonite types risks diluting the mythos and confusing newcomers. When every color can do anything, from hurting to helping, the mystique of Kryptonite as Superman's signature weakness fades. These rare types are best enjoyed as quirky storytelling flavors, fun to geek out about, but not central to Superman's core story. If you thought green Kryptonite was complicated, this grab bag of rare variants shows just how deep the Kryptonite rabbit hole really runs. They prove Kryptonite is far more than a simple poison. It's a versatile tool to unlock weird powers, psychological twists, and threats far beyond just hobbling the Man of Steel. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.